Don't believe the hype. Read the type. This is Type Beast.
Take a look, it's in a book. It's Type Beast, baby.
Yo, man, what are you doing? That's not the intro. What are you talking about?
I was just trying to live out my dream of wanting to be on Reading Rainbow. Man, LeVar Burton was the only black man I saw reading growing up, so I thought I'd give it a shot. Basically, Type Beast was a term I coined in an article I wrote, Why Darnell Can't Read, off my blog post, High End Theories. And so it basically means a bibliophile, a person who loves books. So, kind of playing with the term hype beast. A hype beast is a person who is concerned with materialism and hyped about materialism for the sake of clout. So then you have a type beast, a person who's concerned with literature and what that literature conveys. It's basically us giving the listener a little bit more of the Sixth Sense Report. So during our study period and preparing for episodes, we're reading books, and so we thought we'd let the listener listen in on what those conversations sound like.
On our first episode, welcome back, 39, we mentioned, we were going to introduce some new stuff, some new content. We also mentioned potentially putting some stuff like this behind or on a supporting listeners type of a page. We mentioned Patreon as an option. Right now, I think we're leaning towards the Jordan Peterson platform, I'll call it. It's called Thinkspot Inc. The website's ts.today or www.ts.today. But Thinkspot, so the headline is, Thinkspot is a collaborative community where individuals can explore and exchange ideas in a thoughtful and respectful manner. The platform is an intellectual playground for censorship-free discourse. So right now we're signed up for the beta. I just got an email in the last little bit to get on the platform soon. It sounds like it's coming. So, before we were to launch something like Patreon, Thinkspot seems to be the right solution for us. If and when we do get on there, we'll probably do an episode a little bit more as to why Thinkspot. But at the end of the day, I think it comes down to the fact that because we hold some views that are contradictory to mainstream, liberal thinking, we want to protect ourselves against censorship. And, maybe we have nothing to worry about, but the other aspect of it is, I've always said, the number one way you vote is with your money. And so, contributing to a platform like this is something that is a matter of us voting with what we think is the correct way to engage ideas. So that's a little bit of context as to, what we're going to do with this. But at the end of the day, before it even gets there, we want the listener to engage with this, new content and let us know what they think. So let's jump into the first conversation. So, what are you reading right now, bro?
Well, I'm reading Do More Better, A Practical Guide to Productivity by Tim Challies.
Nice. I like Tim.
No, his stuff is pretty practical and solid. I got a bunch of books from Tim Challies. I got the one on biblical theology, the visual theology books. I got the one on porn. And I think that's it.
True. Yeah, I haven't read much.
Detox. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I've read a bunch of his blogs. I mean, we like the Ninth Commandment stuff.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he's very meticulous, I find, with the way he goes through things, which I like.
Mm-hmm. And very practical. So this book is very practical. It's about, about 100 pages.
It's not bad at all.
Yeah.
Would you say it was an easy read?
Yeah, it was an easy read. Get through it in a day if you're working hard through it. It comes with worksheets.
If you're a nerd.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know what? It's one of those things where Do more, better. A practical guide to productivity. So it's one of those things where like, okay, my workflow is a mess. For those of you who are creatives or you're a student or stay-at-home mom or whatever the case may be, your workflow is a mess. You need to get through this book in the day, so the next day is a bit more organized than the present day, if that's how you want to look at it. But it's a very short read, so that's why you would want to read it in a day. You don't want to be like stretching it out over a month while you're still disorganized.
You're reading it to be more organized.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be added to your disorganization.
Yeah, right. So it comes with worksheets, which is very helpful, and it helps you work through.
Are they in the book, or like is it a supplement?
No. You would have to go to his website, and then you just download it and.
Oh, okay. No, that's good.
And print it.
So cool.
Basically, his whole premise is. It's kind of like an unconventional way of looking at productivity. So he centers, being productive in God, right? So he says, now we come to it. What is productivity? Productivity is effectively stewarding your gifts, talents, time, energy, and enthusiasm for the good of others and to the glory of God. So ultimately, he's basically saying, doing good. Productivity is all about, and therefore it's all about doing good. So then, doing good to others, I should say. So doing good to others for the glory of God, which is kind of weird because a lot of people don't really see productivity including God.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. My mind, the scripture that talks about the days are evil.
Yes.
I think it's Ephesians, right? But let me look it up. But yeah, to me, like, I think there is a sense of within the Bible about being efficient with your time.
Yeah. So he's ultimately says, only when you understand these foundational matters about your God-given purpose and mission will you be ready to get to work. So this book he makes it very clear this is not about quick fixes, but long-term change and the principles you have to have in place for that to be able to be done. I think one of the unique things that stuck out to me about the book was he talks about laziness, and he has social media in there. And I was just like, okay, whoa, how is that? What's the association? So he says, when you ought to be working on your computer, you are only ever 1 or 2 clicks away from checking out your friends on Facebook or welcoming a few minutes of mindless entertainment on YouTube. Text messages provide a welcome distraction from deep thinking and binge watching the latest series on Netflix. So basically, that can set you back a week.
I mean, yeah, I get. He's saying basically it's a really easy distraction.
Yeah, because you're surrounded by temptations to laziness, and they may succumb far more often than you think.
Mm-hmm.
So I never, I guess I'm looking at my own workflow. You're probably thinking about your own workflow. I know I'm distracted. I'm thinking it's distractions, seeing what the latest post is, if somebody's inboxing you, because I take my notifications off.
Yeah. Well, I have
off of most of my apps. I don't have any notifications on. So I guess it messes me up because now I check it often because I don't get notifications.
Yeah. See, I've only turned. My phone's always on silent, always. Mm-hmm. So, but I'm also at work or whatnot. I'm usually listening to a podcast or something. So if I get a call, I usually don't miss a lot of calls when I'm at work, but pretty much my phone's always on silent. But I would say I've also gotten rid of Facebook as the app. I only use, I have it bookmarked. So I have to be intentional about going to the webpage and looking for notifications as opposed to just seeing that, number with a red circle on the app on my phone to be like, oh, I got to get rid of that. Yeah. Almost everything is I'm sure everybody's phone, there's almost always some sort of notification that you could be swiping away or checking, whether it's an app or, some game you have on your phone telling you to come back and play. When he said it, I thought of Facebook can also be used as a tool look at it like for us with regards to this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's a means to be productive at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think my thought was you need to be really intentional with things like social media. How are you not allowing them to distract you?
Mm-hmm.
Versus, I mean, you were saying for me, well, my creative process being prep for this podcast, how easy is it to be like, I'm already on Facebook looking for those things I previously shared, or looking at a link to be like, oh, what's that notification? Oh, what's this message?
Mm-hmm.
Or, oh, I want to talk. And
Why
like,
is he posting that?
yeah, like going down this rabbit hole. Am I going to start getting in a Facebook comment argument instead of, okay, focus at the task at hand?
Yeah.
And would you say that that's kind of his point, is like, do one thing at a time? When he's talking about laziness, he's actually talking about taking a lazy break as opposed to staying focused.
Yeah, because he was basically saying like, being distracted is lazy. It's not just saying you don't want to do anything, but being distracted. He also talks about busyness. So busyness may make you feel good about yourself and give the illusion of getting things done, but it probably just means that you're directing too little attention in too many directions, that you are prioritizing all the wrong things, and that your productivity is suffering. So this is pretty profound to me, because he's saying that do we know what to put our hands to and what not to put our hands to? And we live in a culture where it's rise and grind. We kind of take that puffy Dame Dash mentality, Gary V. Vaynerchuk mentality, where it's just grind, grind, grind. And the more you're doing, the more you're looking like a mover and shaker, and like you're relevant or you're wanted or something like that.
It's like a perception of like how people see you.
Yeah. And you see yourself, right? Because we're a go culture.
Well, and I mean, I know definitely, you can have those moments at work where you're like, I gotta make sure my boss thinks I'm busy. Like in the sense of, when you're working, you want people to perceive that you're working. Right? But then there's also the aspect of, I think what he was saying is getting focused on people perceiving you're working or via busyness, as opposed to just being focused on actually working. Right? Like, what's the worst possible thing? It's like, I know for me, sometimes at work, I'm sending an email on my phone, and that's just maybe a little bit of a bad habit. I get the notification of the email on my phone, so I'm replying to an email on my phone, but in my mind, I've thought, oh, my coworker just walked past and probably thought I was wasting time on my phone. As opposed to, I'm actually working. I just, for some silly reason, I decided to reply to the email on my phone, or text someone on my phone as opposed to emailing them.
Yeah. It's okay. So this next part, he talks about the root of the problem in regards to like the things that distract you from getting the job done. Because remember, the ultimate goal is doing good. So anything that's stopping you from doing good is essentially like a sin and a hindrance, which is kind of deep, because I never really looked at, the notification popping up on my Facebook feed or whatever on my Twitter as a potential sin keeping me from doing good for the glory of God. So he goes on to say, it is a problem that keeps you from doing the very work God has called you to in the short time he gives you here on earth, which means that the absence of productivity or the presence of woeful diminished productivity is first a theological problem. It is a failure to understand or apply the truths God reveals in the Bible. And then he asks you kind of like to look at the things that hinder you from getting work done. So for me, it's like social media, sleeping in late, like liking sleep too much. And of course, it is sometimes like my health, like, I'm not taking care of myself. So then my health ends up catching up to me and distracts me from doing what I'm supposed to be doing and getting things done.
Now for the listener, do you think there's for anyone who's not a Christian, my thought would be around the idea of what's good. What do you mean working for good?
Well, what is the good?
Yeah. Right. I mean, for the Christian and for the non-Christian, I guess. Because I think the principle when he's talking about it for within a Christian context.
Yes.
And I think once we expound what that actually means, for anyone who's not a Christian, the same thing can be applied if you take it outside of the theological context. Not to say that we should or have to, but for those that are like, well, why should I care if they're not a believer?
Well, a lot of times is, you don't want to skip steps, but you have to think about what the ultimate good is. I know if you're an unbeliever and you're like, okay, well, I'm doing this because I like it and they're an end in of itself.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're skipping steps. I think the first thing is like, 'cause at the end of the day, good works not done for God is done in vain.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And you're really just wasting your time.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's, I know might sound crazy, but, good works of, helping an old lady cross the street, feeding the poor, and so forth, giving back to your community is all done in vain. It's useless at the end of the day because you will still burn in hell. What does a profit man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? So before you get to scheduling your day, you need to schedule your life for eternity. You know what I mean? And start really thinking about, okay, wait a minute. What am I putting my hands to because I can die tomorrow? Then what good was this volunteer venture? You know what I mean? Like, think about, like, you did a great work today and you died at the end of the day, and now you're standing before the judgment seat and saying, hey, look, I volunteered at the Salvation Army. Well, no, that wasn't part of the plan. That's not how it works.
No.
Well,
so. and I would say there's two verses I want to quote. One of them I referenced earlier, but so one that I think is directly related right now to what you're talking about would be Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. And then verse 24 says, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ.
Right.
And then the other one that kind of goes back to the time before is Ephesians 5:15 and 16. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time because the days are evil. And so where I wanted to go with it, one is, I think that encompasses, the first point with respect to using your time wisely, using your time efficiently. Laziness, not being wise with your time, in essence, becomes sinful. The second part, though, then gets into what I like about this is whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord. But I think we can, one, expound the point with respect to work, but I think you can also extend that beyond work into whatever you do. Like, as for the Lord, right? In the sense that when you play sports, can you play hockey? Can you play basketball? Can I play hockey? I guess. Can we do it in a manner that is for the Lord, as opposed to, oh no, these things are kind of outside of that spectrum. And the reason I bring that up is to say, it comes back to your point about the Salvation Army, where, well, how did you serve at the Salvation Army?
Right.
Because if you were at the Salvation Army, volunteering your time, cussing off your coworkers the whole time, telling them they're a bunch of losers, and just so totally disgruntled, it's like the act is not the service. Right. It's how you act.
Right. And I think also, Tim Challies makes a profound distinction in regards to good works. So for the Christian, a lot of times we're working from a missional framework where we're saying, okay, the ultimate goal is, preaching salvation and that's it. But I think there's another ultimate goal that goes alongside that, and that's good works. So basically the whole book is premised on Matthew 5:16. And that says, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Now that passage is that good works and giving glory to your Father in heaven. That's not about salvation. So he's saying like the good works you do would make unbelievers say, praise God, even though they're not converted. So a lot of times is, we make a distinction between the sacred and the secular. And we're saying, okay, a sacred work is, preaching the gospel. A secular work is doing something that's not preaching the gospel. Right? But there is no distinction between sacred and secular. All things are sacred before God. So yes, you share the gospel, but then you also innovate and create and you serve. That way you're bringing glory to God, and that the unbelievers would be blessed by your service and by your innovation.
Is this kind of resonating with the idea of being a living testimony then?
I can't really speak on that because I need to take a look into that. But essentially, what he's saying is like the good works. Again, we're talking about scheduling your time and doing the ultimate good.
Mm-hmm.
And so this kind of transitions us into the next part of the book where it talks about the great purpose behind productivity and talking about your roles and your mission. So everybody has responsibilities, right? You have church responsibilities, family responsibilities, podcast responsibilities, work responsibilities. And then within those responsibilities, you have roles. And within those roles or tasks, that's kind of what, what's taking up your time. So you kind of have to be able to, he's saying like, okay, well, you have to be able to sift through and find out which ones ultimately bring the most glory to God. So in the book, he tells you to write down your responsibilities. And then he says, okay, now write down your tasks or your roles within those responsibilities. And then he says, okay, now assign the mission for those responsibilities. So what's your mission for your family? What's your mission for your role at church? What's your mission for the Sixth Sense Report? What's your mission for coaching that team? And now when you look at the mission, you're like, okay,
how do these tasks / responsibilities actually align
with bringing doing good for the glory of God, that people would look at those good works, not salvation, not telling them, turn or burn, but wow, you know what, Joel, your dedication to teaching my son how to skate, when, taking your time out to, make his day. I don't understand the gospel, but, I thank God. I think, if it's thank God I have to say, then thank you, Joel. Thank God for Joel and the work he's doing with my son.
Yeah, as opposed to yelling at the kid because he won't try harder.
Well, no, you still got to.
Yeah. But you know what I'm getting at, right? Like there's the coach who doesn't stop yelling. Is kind of the picture I'm trying to paint.
So I thought this was revolutionary for me, and in regards to, because once I started making the list for the Sixth Sense Report, and I started looking at all the stuff I do, and I'm like, oh man, oof. And then I started looking at the stuff that I do with Tyra. I'm looking at my wife, and I'm looking at church, and then you're like in that, and then you got school there, and you're like, okay, whoa, okay, yes, this is, it's very consuming. So he basically gives you like 3 questions to sift through those responsibilities. And for those people who are listening and following along, and you're writing it down, so you're basically making your list of responsibilities, and then you're making your list of tasks or roles within that, and then after that you would make.
Would you say you're reconciling it to the mission?
No. So again, like with those responsibilities, above those responsibilities, you're putting, okay, what is the mission of all these responsibilities, to see like, okay, which one gets priority?
I see.
Yeah, which one of these responsibilities gets, am I on mission? Not even priority, but am I on mission when I'm working with the Sixth Sense Report? Is this really glorifying the God? Is my time with my wife really glorifying the God? Is my personal time, because that's another one of your responsibilities, your own personal time, your physical health, your spiritual health. These are things. And so he poses these really good questions to kind of make you sift through. Okay, wait.
I want to go back to that last statement, because I think it's really good to flesh out a bit in the sense of, am I on mission with my personal time? Because I think, for all of us, it's easy to think of like stuff in the sense of just rest and relaxation. Right. So personal time, there might be study, there might be rest and relaxation. But I think, sometimes we just do things like, oh, it's personal time, I'll just scroll Facebook. But like, if you end up getting stressed out, you're getting in an argument, you're doing all these things with your personal time that actually cause you more, it causes you to need more personal time. Like you're not being intentional with your personal time. And consequently, you're hindering your productivity, because the whole idea of your personal time should be that when you go back to the time that is intentionally glorifying to God or intentionally doing work, or doing good works, that you have more energy, that you have more ability to focus and be intentional, as opposed to hindering your ability to do those things.
Yeah. Right. So these are the things that, that's very helpful and I found very insightful about the book, and trying to prioritize what's important. So, and that's why, anybody can just pick this up, use it, and it would be extremely helpful. I think the 3 questions that he was posing is, like, in regards to sifting through your responsibilities. Ask yourself this: are these the right and best things for me to be doing? Do these things fit my mission? Are there things I can do in this area that no one else can do? Am I especially gifted or talented in this area? Do I bring unique value to this? Is there someone else who could do this better than I can? Right. So those are things that you're kind of sifting through your responsibilities and saying, okay, well, is this really helpful? That I'm not overburdening myself with duties and things to do.
And I think it sounds like a little bit, you're also saying, like, should this be reallocated? Right? I mean, I think, within a work environment where you've got a team with you, whether you're the lead of the team or you're part of a team, you might be able to say, wait a second, this isn't the best use of my time. Whether it's because you're not very good at a particular task, or someone else would be better suited for that task. Or maybe because the last thing you said was really interesting with respect to, or one of the questions, I guess, made me think about just, how is my time allocated, and is this a good use of my time? And if you have things within your workload that is not a good use of your time, but still needs to get done, you're faced with a bit of a dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we achieve that?
Right.
So I don't know, that series of questions I thought were really good as a sort of like reflection to go, yeah, you might have to answer some questions in a way that's like, yeah, this is not a good use of my time, but I still have to do it, which is like the worst possible answer to one of those questions, right? Like, oh, I still need to be the one to do this because there is nobody else.
Right.
But that's also, how do you, from a good stewarding of your funds, let's say you're running a business, let's say the 6 Cents Report is an example, right? If there's a component of a task that we and you are doing where you're like, we suck at this, but we still have to do it to a certain standard. Ideally you want to grow to the point where you can hopefully pay someone else to do it so that you can do your aspect where the other question is like, where are you uniquely qualified to contribute?
Right. Yeah. Because it's all about energy. And if you only have, you have a limited amount of energy, you don't have unlimited amount of energy throughout the day. So you want to make sure that, like you said, you're choosing the right things to put your hand to. But he made a good point. Like, like some things just have to be left undone. And, that's just how it is. Like you can't say, okay, well, I have to do this because nobody's going to do this. Well, is it necessary? Because sometimes it's not even necessary.
And sometimes the OCD in some of us makes it difficult. Like to reference another book, the How to Read a Book, you've said a few times on the podcast.
Yes.
The conclusion is not to read the whole book.
Right. And
like, I know for me, I'd be like, why would I, what do you mean don't read the whole book? There's like this OCD aspect where I'm like, but how do I say I read the book if I didn't read the whole book?
Yeah. No, totally. Right. So then he gets into this next section about choosing your tools, selecting your tools for organization. And so the 3 key tools that we should have to stay organized are task management tool, an information tool, and a scheduling tool. A task management tool, and then and then he starts plugging all these apps, which is kind of cool. That's what makes his book pretty dope, because it's okay, you're getting into the theological aspect of why you know the heart of why you're doing what you're doing. But then he gets to, okay, let's get to the tech, let's get to the apps.
Yeah,
Apps?
how do we use what resources are available to us
Right,
to be
what
more
apps?
efficient?
And I like how what he writes. He writes basically building up the history. Kind of starts from like, okay, well, you know, we had filing cabinets, you know, we had paper, we have pen, you know, so you write this stuff down. But now we have the Todoist.com, and we have Evernote, and we have Google Calendar. Yes, we had calendars before, but not like this, right?
Yeah. Not where it can be streamed to every device you have instantly, as opposed to having to write it down in 7 different places or take photocopies or.
Yeah, so he's talking about the nuances of these apps. But I never really, you know, thought about a task management tool.
Is that the Todoist?
Yeah, the Todoist.com, and then
which is basically a pun on to-do list, but
yeah, and then information tool, which is Evernote, and then scheduling tool is Google Calendar. And I guess, you know, before, for me, everything's all in one. I didn't think to put a task management and information tool. I would just do everything all in the one the notepad in my phone.
Oh, okay.
I just use the notepad in my phone, or I just use my email.
Yeah.
You know, and I just store stuff in my email.
Yeah. Just what you would say. Would you agree then? You were essentially using tech in a simple manner, just kind of like, okay, this will work, as opposed to is this option going to work best for me? Right,
but then part of it too is you start running into the problems of being intentional, and trusting. He says, and trusting. Yes, you trust God, but then you got to trust the apps. You got to trust the process. That you would rely on it when life doesn't go the way it's supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so that's when it gets where you're kind of like, okay, well, you know, you're saving stuff here, you're saving stuff there, you're saving stuff here. You have notes here, you have notes there. But, you know, you're really just trying to consolidate them into 3 different places and use them accordingly. No matter what happens, just stick to the process and do it that way, right? Because he talks about motivation gets you started, but motivation won't keep you routined.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, being an accountant, you know, the routine is an aspect of, you know, just the way things are. There's always a routine component to your, like for an accountant, whether it's monthly or annually, where there's certain things that always got to get done. And generally speaking, those things that always got to get done will generally be more efficient if there's a routine component to them. Whether that's, okay, every Tuesday I focus on this particular task because I know everything I need for that task is already done, and now I can, you know, be really diligent, get it all done, as opposed to, if I did it on Fridays, I would get 90% done, and now I got to wait till this other piece from someone else gets completed. And so that routine component starts, I think it's a bit of scheduling so that when you devote your time to something, you can get it completed. But as well, you're kind of coordinating, going like, okay, where is everything that I, you know, what are my needs? And once all those particular needs are met, then I know I can jump to that task. As well as not forgetting about it. Because if every Tuesday you're doing the same particular thing, you're not going to, the end of a week, you're not going to go, oh man, I totally forgot that task that I'm responsible for this week.
Right. Yeah. So again, these are important things that we have to try to balance. And part of it too is like for the Christian, he's saying, you know what, yes, you have these responsibilities, but you have to make sure you factor in your spiritual responsibilities of prayer and reading, and you have to keep that alongside of the things that you're doing, because, you know, for the unbeliever, I know it sounds ridiculous, but this might be a paradigm shift for you. But for the Christian, they will die. And, you know, Tim doesn't say it, but I will say that, yeah, you would die if you're not reading and praying. You know, you're doing everything. You know, you're doing everything well. You know, you're making money, you're making moves, but you're not reading and praying. You will spiritually die.
Mm-hmm.
Then what good? And then what good? What good is all that productivity? So you're really, you know, everything is revolving around your reading and praying, rather than everything revolving around
How much money is in your bank account?
And you know, your meetings and sales and so forth. So that's why, you know, for the Christian, it's a different worldview, it's a different experience. It's a different good than what unbeliever might deem good. Now, another theological aspect getting into planning is interruptions. Like yes, you're disciplined, and yes, you got a schedule, and yes, you're sticking to it. But then the interruptions, and how are you viewing those interruptions? And basically, you know, God's providence. And a lot of people see, you know, especially, you know, do you understand the idea of God's providence? And God's providence meaning, you know, God being sovereign and in control of everything. At the same time, you know, human freedom acting within that. And what ends up happening is things happen. You know, just things out of your control. You can't control, you know, when things don't go your way. So I think it's just one of those deep aspects where you're like, yeah, we have to know this. We have to wrestle with this. And then he has a quote from C.S. Lewis. And it says, "The great thing, if one can, is to stop regarding all the unpleasant things as interruptions of one's own or real life. The truth is, of course, that what one calls the interruptions are precisely one's real life, the life God is sending one day by day. What one calls one's real life is a phantom of one's own imagination." So essentially he's saying, like, you know, like, you really have to understand that reality is God's in control and things don't go your way. So you really have to toe the line between and this is another deep theological aspect. You know, you're working at work and you have a project that you need to set your mind on, and your boss says, "No, I need you to come do this." Or somebody says, "Okay, I need you to come do this." So now you're towing the tightrope between the fear of man and pride. Okay, am I being the fear of man by saying yes to my boss? Or am I being prideful by saying no?
And there's balance between the two.
Yeah. Oh, there's balance. So this isn't, you know, it's one of those nuances that these are things that you have to wrestle with. So again, yeah, this book is awesome. I recommend it. One more thing, I would give another nugget. Like, I'm just, you know, giving away the book, but basically he has this thing about where he says he has this paradigm or this principle called serve and surprise. Serve and surprise. So it's all about excelling at your role. So yes, you serve your wife, but how do you excel at serving your wife? You surprise her. The ladies love that. Click share.
yeah. Well, and I like, you know, it's funny. I have this. It's just the way that there's a movie. I don't remember what it's called, but it's with, I think it's Anthony Hopkins, the old white guy, and this young black guy, who's like, he's mentoring him or he's a student or something, and he goes, "The key to a woman's heart is an unexpected gift." And I've kind of brought that into my marriage in really one simple way, and that is, my wife gets flowers when she doesn't expect it, but on days she'd expect it, I don't bring flowers. And not to say like, oh, I'm intentionally not bringing her flowers on Valentine's Day, but like, I might give her flowers 2 weeks before Valentine's Day. Or like, the idea being like, you know, whatever the norm is, like, why do I only want her to get flowers when she's expecting to get flowers? Like, I'm just going to come home with flowers randomly one day.
Yeah.
Because then she'll appreciate flower. Like, you know, as opposed to appreciating it because I did what I'm supposed to do.
Right. But and I think that, I thought that was very profound and beautiful, because like, yes, you know, we apply that to our wives and our families, but also, you know, within service and ministry, you know, you're teaching, you know, Bible study, and you know, you bring coffee for everybody. You know what I mean? Just simple gestures like that, like excelling at your role by surprising the people you are serving, not just meeting the basic need, but going above the call of duty as Christ has done for us. You know, he's not just a judge who has declared us not guilty, but he's also the great physician who has healed us, right? So we were sick and now we're better. So these are the things that, you know, we learn from the scriptures, and being able to have a full theology of being doing more better, and being scheduled and being productive in a biblical way. So I thought this book was really good.
Okay,
I
so
would recommend you get it.
I want to wrap up with 2 questions.
Okay.
For the listener who's like, dude, I don't got no time to read books. Like, you got 2 kids under 2, whatever it is, right? Like, sure, we get it. There's seasons of life. What would you say is like the Coles notes, major takeaways? I mean, you might have already said these things, but like, what would be the things that you're like, okay, implement this and this, or 1 or 2 things, maybe it's even 5 points that you would say, okay, here's the key takeaway. And the second question then would be, for the listener who's considering getting this book, what would you say is like the big reason why they should get the book?
Okay. Yeah, for the person who doesn't have time to read, but wants to be organized, I would say the best thing you can do is set aside time and read the book. Like there is no, because that's why you.
Yeah.
That's why.
And it's a 100-page book.
Yeah, it's a 100-page book, and that's why you're in the situation you're in. Like, you know what I mean? And Tim Challies says in the start of the book, it's not a quick fix. And he even says in the book, like, yo, I know you're going to try to skip chapter 1 and 2 and 3. I know you're going to try to skip it and go straight to the apps. Don't do it. That's not, there's no quick fix to this. So, sorry, man. I can't help you. But there is an audiobook. Get the audiobook. There you go. So while you're washing dishes or,
you can listen to it over and over and over.
Or doing your bench press, you could do it. You could do that. And for the person who wants to pick up the book, the reason why you should get it is because it's the godly thing to do, to support Tim Challies, because he's a godly guy.
Yeah, no, Tim Challies is cool. He's got a really no, but I mean, cool in that he has a peculiar story where he's at the place right now, personally, where he has issues with his arms, and so he's basically having to do audio dictation to write his books and write his blogs. And so in that sense, I would say, support him.
Yeah.
Because he's got a struggle that he's going through, but he's still producing high quality content. And I would say the Lord's still using him. So
yeah. And then other than, supporting Tim Challies, being godly is a good motivation and reevaluating what is good. Because even like I would even add to the book that, Jesus talks about rejoicing, leaping for joy for the rewards that you will get in heaven. So when does eternity start? Eternity starts now. So, you want to store up gifts and you want to be excited about the things Jesus is telling you to be excited about, the rewards you'll get in heaven. If you're not concerned or excited about the rewards you'll get in heaven, that means, you're not on the right mission. And you and Jesus might not be on the same page in this aspect. This isn't about salvation. You're doing these things to be saved, but, you're doing these things to glorify God. So the rewards aspect is just like a kid wins a spelling bee and gets a trophy. He loves the trophy because of what it represents, not for the trophy in and of itself. And it's the same thing when we come before God. The rewards we get aren't going to be something we rejoice in, but it's symbolic of the work that the good that God has done through us while we were on earth. So that is what's going to make us joy. So again, we want to realign our affections with God when we're doing good works. So yeah, get the book, Do More, Better, a practical guide to productivity by Tim Challies.
And where can people find Tim Challies? TimChallies.com?
Yeah, in his blog.
And so I'm sure he'll have his book on there if you can't find it on Amazon or anywhere else.
All right. See you guys next time.